Should we get going? Everybody ready? All right, let's get started. My name is Sarah Martin, and I'm with WHAM, and along with Michael Livingston from, where's Michael, from MPAC. We will be emceeing this wonderful show that's been put together. And to start it off, we're going to have some singing with or by Brigid McDonald, who everybody knows, singer, songwriter, sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet, and currently there's a play over at the History Museum that sells out for every performance about, theater, not the museum, about her life and her sister's life. Do not miss that if you could get a ticket. Anyway, without further ado, Brigid McDonald, give it up.
Oh dear. I have some songs to sing, but this is not solo stuff. Not at all. So we expect you to sing very, very loudly because the wind will blow it away over there if you don't. So sing as loud as you can. You can just stand close and sing loud. That's the only two things you have to do. And I thought these songs were relevant because most of us here probably have been singing them for at least 30 years. So we should know them by heart. So I need your help. The first one is This Land Is Your Land. We know that's true. That's a good song. Okay. And I'm sorry I don't have words for everybody, but I think you kind of know them. And I'll sing loud too if you do. Okay? This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking a ribbon of highway, I saw before me an endless skyway. I saw below me a golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I've roamed and rambled, and I've followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond desert. And all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. This land is California to the New York Island. From Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking, I saw a sign there, and the sign said, no trespassing. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. This is made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the Gulf Stream waters to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Yee-hoo! You and me. And then, of course, we all know this one, and this is true of all of us. We shall not be moved. Well, we've moved inside, but not physically. Okay? Okay. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like the tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. On the road to freedom, we shall not be moved. On the road to freedom, we shall not be moved, just like the tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. On the road to peace, we shall not be moved. On the road to peace, we shall not be moved, just like the tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like the tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Oh yeah, this is appropriate for today. This we'll sing is Blowing in the Wind. Oh. I didn't even know it was going to be windy. Okay, everybody knows this one because Bob Dylan wrote it. He's from Minnesota.
He won the Nobel Prize.
And he won the Nobel Prize. Hey, we're in honor of Bob. Good for you. Okay. What are we singing?
Oh yeah, okay, there it is. Okay.
How many roads must a man... Forgive the sexist language, I'm sorry, but I couldn't say it, it didn't fit in. Okay. How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before he sleeps in the sand? How many times must a cannonball fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Yes, and how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? How many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Woo! Hey! So the wind will have the answer. Hey. Now this one is kind of long, but it's a good song. We hope all these kind of dreams come true. Last night I didn't think it's strangest. Last night I had a most wonderful dream, it should be, but we'll say strangest. Last night I had the strangest dream I never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I dreamed I saw a mighty room filled with women and men, and the paper they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the papers were signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, while swords and guns and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. Woo! Amen! Hallelujah!
They've got the Frank Kellogg. The Kelton's a boulevard right out here.
They can hear that, good. Now, down by the riverside. Now, how much can we stand of this? Is it okay? We're not too cold yet, huh?
No, one more.
One more.
Okay, and then your feet.
Somebody get the hook. Get the hook.
Got one more. I wrote this one. I wrote the words. Got 3, okay? We can do it in 3 minutes. I have 20 songs on here, but I
Oh my God. Yay!
Thanks. This one, it goes like this. It's part of Nat King Cole's Unforgettable, but it goes, impeachable, that's what you are. Impeachable, you've gone too far. You bought your way to be the president. You are the pain of every immigrant, and you're dumb about environment too. You impeachable, you. Okay, everybody knows it. It's real easy. Okay, say it real loud. Okay, they want to hear it in Washington, D.C. Impeachable, that's what you are. Impeachable, you've gone too far. You bought your way to be the president. You are the pain of every immigrant, and you're dumb about environment too. You impeachable, you.
Are you ready? Yeah, thank you, Brigid. And now I'd like to introduce Sue Ann Martinson, who, along with Mike Madden and Kim DeFranco, where are you, the three of you, put this incredible program together, and we thank you so much. Sue Ann is a member of WHAM, a longtime activist, and has a wonderful blog called riseuptimes.org. Be sure to check it out. But I think most people here probably get it. Read it faithfully. So, Sue Ann.
Welcome to all of you. I just have a few words I want to say about this program. Can you hear me okay? All right. Martin Luther King called Vietnam a symptom of a deeper malady of the American spirit. Today, we have another symptom, Venezuela. He predicted that we would be marching and attending rallies without end unless we have a significant change in American life and policy. Now, we have endless wars, and in the case of Venezuela, an attempted coup with a threat of war. Our hearts go out to the people of Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Pakistan, and Palestine, and Yemen via the bombs we provide for Saudi Arabia, where the bomb destroyed both land and people, and to Venezuela, where the people struggle to stay out of the clutches of U.S. empire. Dr. King did not predict the crisis worldwide of climate chaos. He would understand today that also requires a significant change. Militarism and climate chaos are inextricably linked. Not only is the U.S. a major polluter at the many U.S. NATO military bases worldwide, they also protect the corporations who are determined to leave Mother Earth an empty husk, stripped of her resources, the land devastated by both war and climate change, as it is already in many countries. And once again, Venezuela is a symptom of Western arrogance, as the U.S. posits that the people of Venezuela cannot govern themselves. A member of the U.S. government has clearly stated the U.S. corporations want Venezuelan oil, fossil fuel, to pollute the planet. That's part of the reason for this takeover coup. Another reason, not so obvious to some, is that Venezuela is a socialist, not a capitalist country, and wishes to be independent of the yoke of U.S. empire, as do countries like Cuba and Iran. Here are the words that Martin Luther King used to open the Beyond Vietnam, the Time to Break Silence speech. Some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony. But we must speak. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision. But we must speak, for we are deeply in need of a new way beyond the darkness that seems so close around us. Today we're addressing two silences. One is the silence around the Beyond Vietnam speech and its anti-militarism, pro-peace message and formal programs about Dr. King, such as they have on Martin Luther King Day. The other is the silence around the breadth and extent of U.S. NATO bases worldwide. And inside there will be a poster with a map, and you can see all the U.S. bases and then the few that Russia has. In the United States, strong resistance against the many evil mandates of the Trump administration around racism and peace and climate change continues on the streets and in the courts, in the neighborhoods and the churches, and by poets, musicians, and artists. In that there is hope. Resistance against U.S. NATO aggression worldwide has not been as clearly understood by the U.S. peace and justice movement, although in Europe, protests have been taking place for a decade. The bases are in their backyards and affect their quality of life. Their governments collaborate with the U.S. government. Martin Luther King was prophetic in his awareness of what we are now facing. Today we'll be hearing some of his words and from our speakers who will talk about Dr. King's double legacy of civil rights and the linking of militarism, racism, and poverty. His words, although grounded in time and place, are visionary and crucial in understanding the need to act then and now and what must be done. Words that are as relevant today as they were on April 4th, 1967.
Thanks, Sue. And we are very lucky today to have two students. They're on spring break and they're taking off during their spring break to come read Leila on my right, your left, and Cocoa, who are going to read from the Beyond the, what is it? Beyond the... that's hard. Beyond Vietnam speech. So, Leila, are you going first? Okay, thank you.
All right. Why are you speaking about the war, Dr. King? Why are you joining the voices of dissent? Peace and civil rights don't mix, they say. Aren't you hurting the cause of your own people, they ask? And when I hear them, though I often understand the source of their concern, I'm nevertheless greatly saddened, for such questions mean that the inquirers have not really known me, my commitment, or my calling. Indeed, their questions suggest that they do not know the world in which they live. In the light of such tragic misunderstandings, I deem it of signal importance to state clearly, and I trust concisely, why I believe that the path from Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the church in Montgomery, Alabama, where I began my pastorate, leads clearly to this sanctuary tonight.
It became clear to me that the war was doing far more than the devastating hopes of the poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and to die in extraordinarily high proportions relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young men who had been crippled by our society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they have not found in Southwest Georgia and East Harlem. So we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schools. So we watch them in brutal solidarity burning the huts of a poor village, but we realize that they would hardly live on the same block in Chicago. I could not be silenced in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. And before I read this, I'm going to read something about NATO. I just got a email from, or we all did probably, from the president of Vets for Peace, and they are demonstrating right now in front of the building wherever NATO is meeting and planning their next war. So, following on those two readings, what does this have to do with NATO? People still ask the same question today and say that peace and civil rights don't mix. Martin Luther King Jr. would say they mix as much, if not more, today, with the purveyors of war and violence, hate and fear dominating our world, in major part through NATO. Am I next? No. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, that's right. We have... We went over this really well. We really did. Our next readers are Leila and Cocoa from Wyndon Grade School, or elementary school. They don't say grade school anymore. Elementary school in Minneapolis, and they too have given up part of their spring break to come read for us. So Leila and Cocoa. Another Cocoa. Yeah. Two Cocos. You can't have enough Cocos. Are they cold inside? I wonder. So, they're coming. Huh?
Next. They're not here.
They are here. We just saw them.
They are here, but not here.
Yeah. Oh, they are here. Yeah.
Here.
Oops.
Back to them, maybe. Go back to them.
Yeah, all right. And I'll read something else about NATO after the kids speak. But Michael, would you like to introduce Mel? And we'll have Mel speak, and then we'll have the kids read.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Michael Livingston. I'm one of the two co-MCs for this event, along with Sarah. It is my pleasure to introduce a longtime fighter for human rights for all human beings, a person who is an internationalist, an organizer, an activist, and a journalist. Please welcome Mel Reeves.
All right. How's everybody? I got to be honest with y'all. I'm not feeling being outside the cold again, because I was just at an event yesterday. I don't know if any of y'all were there. We had an event yesterday. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the event we did yesterday. It's called Defend Ilhan, Defend Rules of Free Speech, Palestinian Rights, Defend Immigrant Rights, Liberian Somali refugees, no to U.S. intervention in Venezuela, no to Islamophobia. I read all that because while we were out in the cold yesterday, I realized that that's the kind of event that we got this kind of weird. So people are behind me, aren't they? So I move back a little further. Can we? All right. No, it always feels weird when you're speaking people behind you like that. And so I articulated all the issues on the flyer because I think that's the kind of event that Martin King would have been involved in, would have inspired, would have helped organize. And you all should have been there if you weren't there. Shame on y'all. We had food. It was a good time. So I realized, when they asked me to do the speech, so I told, who was it, Sarah, Sue, whoever reached out to me, and I gave her the speech that I was thinking that I should make. But then, when you're going to speak to folks, you always ought to consider your audience a little bit. And I realized that, the speech, my title about, having the same kind of commitment that the oppressor has, it kind of fits this crowd. Right? You all are committed. I mean, what can I say? You know what I'm saying? Think about this. This is a crowd that, that is committed to justice. I mean, am I right? Yeah. Okay, all right. So I feel like I'm going to be speaking to the choir a little bit.
We're ready to sing.
You're ready to sing? Okay. Well, no. The idea of speaking to the choir is that you kind of nod your head to it because it's like it's not new to you, right? So, it's important to point out that MLK was effective partly because of his commitment. Remember, he was the same person who said, if a person has not found something they are willing to die for, then they are not fit to live. That's a hell of a statement when you think about it. But Martin King lived that out to the hilt. And when we do these celebrations on April 4th, I think one thing that has to stand out to us and that we can't forget should be uppermost in our mind is that Martin King was murdered by the state. And I'm not just saying that. In 1999, in Bowers versus MLK, I think it was his widow, there was a civil suit that reached the conclusion that the United States government, entities organized by or part of the United States government, killed Martin King. Are you all aware of that? Most of you all aware. And there's a good book about the whole trial and whatever. And I think it's interesting that, on the day that he got killed, on the day of his assassination, the anniversary of it, people seldom talk about that, right? They seldom talk about the fact that it was like it didn't happen. And it makes sense that the bourgeois press would want to play that down, but we as activists should play that up. And since we're the older folks, we need to tell the younger people this is what happened. That Martin Luther King was such a threat to this country, perceived as such a threat that they had to kill him. Think about how deep that is. That this is a system that even Martin King was just one person. Think about it. He was just one human being. How could he hurt this system? But it shows you how serious they are about you even talking about this. Is you opposing their values. You standing up against what they stand for. That is a threat to them. And so every time we come out, every time we come out and we denounce an injustice, we are a threat to them. And that's why you ought to do it. That's why you ought to do it. Because they ought to know that there are people pushing back. And we got to continue to do this for the younger generation. And every time I come to protest now, it's like I see way too much gray hair. And I'm not picking on anybody because I got gray hair. All right? And so years ago, I would speak and I would say to folks, because that's where I'm coming from, that ultimately, reform is good, right? Policy change is good, but ultimately, just like if you are trying to weed a garden, right? You know how it works. The weeds get in the garden. The only way you can get in there and kind of whack away at the tops of them, but unless you pull the weeds up by the root, right, it keeps coming back. And so that's what we have to do with this system. We can reform it. We can kind of make some policy changes. But if you notice, we make a change and they push right back. We make a change and they push right back. This has to be pulled up by its roots. It has to be pulled up by its roots. And that's what we tell young people, that it doesn't work. If it's evil, it's got to be gotten rid of. I'm a Christian, and the word says to us to resist evil. To resist it. Not to play around with it, not to mess around, but to resist it. And if something's evil, you got to get rid of it. You got to do something different. That's not hard words to hear, because we live in this society. You know what's going on. Right now, people are locked down in prisons around this country who shouldn't be in jail. Right now, a mother's trying to figure out how to feed her children, right? In the richest country in the world. That shouldn't be. We know that, right? Right now, some kid is out in the street because he realizes after he's gone through a few years of school that it doesn't make any difference for him. That his life is already determined by a racist system that set him up to fail. And that shouldn't be. We have to denounce a system that has a budget that the budget for military defense is larger than the budget for social welfare. That doesn't make any sense, does it? No. And so we should be opposed to a system that thinks that military action is more important than folks sitting down and working out their differences, right? We have to oppose a system that complains about, we spent years talking about Russiagate and Russia interference in the U.S. elections and people interfering in China. And then the U.S. government is interfering in the internal affairs of Venezuela. All right? We've got to change a system that does that. We've got to change a system that has a police force that treats us like anything but human beings, and especially a part of the population. So a system that differentiates between us people based on their sexual orientation, based on where they come from, based on what we look like. The truth of the matter, I say this all the time, people laugh, but it's absolutely true. If we were organized as a society, we wouldn't do that, would we? No. So then why not organize a society that doesn't do that kind of stuff? Let's do it. Yeah. So, this is what us old heads have to do for young folks. And so another significant thing about MLK is that, he's misunderstood. I hear some young people saying, well, Martin King wasn't all that down, and he wasn't really revolutionary, he wasn't militant. It's like, no, I always tell them, you got to go back and read a little more. You got to stop. Don't stop at 1963 or 65. You got to, don't stop at 66. Check out 68, 67, and 68. In 1967, on April 4th, 1967, Martin Luther King gave the most radical speech that anybody had given, just about, with the exception of probably Eugene Debs and a few other stuff, Paul Robeson and a few other folks. But he gave one of the most radical speeches that anybody has ever given, that denounced the U.S. government's involvement in Vietnam. Not only did he denounce that, but he denounced a society and a system that he talked about that encouraged militarism, right? Materialism and rampant racism. He talked about that, and he denounced that war because it was said it was wrong. Right? He said the war was wrong, and not only was it wrong, but the money that was spent on the war, it was money that could be spent on folks right here. Right? And that's a speech where he said that the United States, not Vietnam, not other folks, not Russia, right? Not folks in the rest of but the United States was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. He said that in 67, and guess what? That's true right now. We live in a society where our government has been at war for almost 20 years. Continuous war in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've used drone warfare to drop bombs in Syria, Pakistan, Somalia, right? They've got bases in almost every country in the world, right? So that's not a peaceful country. That's a country that thing is about violence. And Martin made the point that people pointed violence in the neighborhood, in the hood, but he said you can't denounce the violence in the hood without denouncing the violence that the U.S. government commits. And they ought to know better. At least the folks in the hood got an excuse. They're catching hell. What's the U.S. government's fault? Excuse. So people misunderstand that this man was a revolutionary, that he was a serious man, and that he opposed the social, economic, political system that existed. And he also, some people try to paint him out to be a good Democrat. Just not true. You know what I'm saying? He understood that the real change was not going to come about through the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. I know it's easy for us to pick on Trump, but let me tell you something. Trump hasn't even come close to killing the amount of people that Obama killed using drone warfare. We got to tell the truth. And Obama's a nice-looking guy, looks like me, but I got to tell the truth. Wrong is wrong and right is right. It was under the Barack Obama administration, under the Democratic administration, under Clinton's administration that we got the war on drugs that put so many of our folks in jail, right? When it was under a Democratic administration where people started being deported, right? In fact, people jokingly were calling our black brother the deporter-in-chief. He was the first one that began to separate folks from their families. That's the truth. It is what it is. Martin King saw through that. That's why he didn't side with either the Republicans or the Democrats. Because he recognized that the people had to come up with a party of their own that would do right by them. We can continue to beg the Democrats all we want. We've had about 100 years of begging now. Common sense ought to tell us after a while that, if I keep asking my brother and sister to do something that's right and they won't do it, after a while I got to say, but that's just who they are. Right, I better go and ask somebody else and do something else because they're not going to do it. So if somebody keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again, you got to believe that's what they're about. And he's been misinterpreted. I was reading up about why people were coming to trying to figure out why was Martin King murdered, and there was a professor that said that he was murdered not so much because of what he said in Vietnam. That he spoke out on Vietnam not so much because he was opposed to the war, but because of the fact that it was taken from the domestic budget. And I was like, well, that professor does not understand Martin King. Martin King stood up for the folks in Vietnam because he was a human being. He saw all human beings as human beings, and he thought all human beings had a right to life, right? And a right not to be oppressed and exploited. So that's why he saw the Vietnamese like he would see his own brother and sister. That was the beauty of it. Remember, he saw them as part of what he called the beloved community. You know what the beloved community to him was? Everybody, every human being. God's children were the beloved community. Am I right, Brother Bishop? Yes. God's people were the beloved community. That's what he was talking about. All of us. He saw past the crap, because it's crap. Every time you look at somebody and who's different from you and you try to differentiate them from you, I always tell people, when we do the anti-police violence fight, they say, well, the police need training. They need more sensitivity. Let me tell you something. If I walk up to somebody and they got two eyes and a mouth, right, and they got two legs, opposable thumbs, I'm going to assume it's a human being, and I'm going to treat them like that. Right? Right? You see a human being, you don't need no book on that, right? You don't need a book to tell me how to treat this brother, how to treat this sister. That's a human being, right? I ought to treat a human being like I want to treat myself, right? Right. So that's what Martin was about, and that it's also important to remember that Malcolm, and I confuse him sometimes. Martin King was maladjusted, and he tried to teach us to be maladjusted. Remember, he said that living in a society, you ought to be maladjusted. Remember, he said that? And it made sense. Why would you adjust to injustice? Why would you adjust to things that are not right? Right? And that's what we are. And this is what we have to pass on to our kids and our grandkids, that they have to be maladjusted, that they have to walk in a different way, that they have to cut a different path. Remember that speech in 1967, for folks to look it up who aren't familiar with it, it's called Beyond Vietnam. Some people call it the anti-Vietnam speech. There's a lot of names for it, but mainly it's called Vietnam and Beyond, or Beyond Vietnam. In that speech, he talked about a revolution of values. And so if we want to really make change, it's not enough to just make cosmetic change. You see this happening all the time. And I try to teach this to the young people. You can't operate like the oppressors and think that you're going to come up with something different. You've got to change the way you think. You've got to change your values. A young man just was laid to rest. A young rapper was laid to rest that a lot of people have a lot of respect for. And he was a good guy. but he was still rapping about some negative values, even though he's doing some good things. You got to rap about good values. You got to rap about love and peace and justice and what have you, right? That's how he began to change. We can't talk about changing society if we mistreat one another, and we have to be careful of that in the movement. You know, if we have a disagreement, we got to figure it out. We got to work it out. I just had one recently and realized I got to work it out on some level. But we can't say that we're about love and justice and we treat one another unjustly. We've got to actually parrot what we say. We've got to live out, rather, embody the values of the things of what we say. It's not enough for us to say we're political, we're opposed to this and we're opposed to that, we're opposed to racism, but then we don't treat people well ourselves, right? We can't say we're for justice and we treat people badly who have a different sexual orientation. We can't say we're for justice and we treat badly people who look differently or people who come from a different country, right? Us activists have to be right as well. So ultimately, and I'm done, we've got to, if we want to honor Martin King, we've got to be committed, right? And committed as he was committed. And us old folks, we've got to be committed enough to tell these stories to our young people, right? You know, you got to tell about us old cats, you know, talk about these old rallies, you know, and Mel Reeves, when he got the mic, didn't want to let it go. Because talking about justice got good to him. But we got to tell these stories that we protested in the cold, right, in the heat, right, in the rain, because we stood up for right. That people who stood up, tell your kids that people did stand up for right. That there has been a legacy, there is a legacy of people who stand up for right in this town and other towns. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mel. It seems very appropriate now that we hear the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King himself.
Let us rise up tonight with a greater rest.
Put the microphone to it.
Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on. In these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be, we have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, several years ago I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written. And while sitting there autographing books, a black woman came up. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing and I said, "Yes." The next minute I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. That blade had gone through and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in, and from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I'd received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I'll never forget it. said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say tonight, that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963. Black people of Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, now it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, "We're sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane, and to be sure that all of the bags were checked, and to be sure that nothing would be wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully, and we've had the plane protected and guarded all night." And then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out, or what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
All right.
We now have a eulogy for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, presented by Bishop Richard Howell of Shiloh Temple International Ministries and the Minnesota-Wisconsin Dakotas District Council. Bishop Howell.
Good afternoon. Today we eulogize a great American whose work continues to live on the pages of human and civil rights, documented and verified by truth and justice. While he lived, his work was vetted by an unjust system of hate, discrimination, and bigotry. Yet that did not slow him down as he continued the work commissioned by God to uproot these ungodly systems of supremacy, which prove that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew the work was hard and knew just as well that death was imminent, as he predicted he would not live to see his 40th birthday. Yet his call towards justice had far more longevity than his own life. And the call exceeded the boundaries of popularity, wealth, and fame. As he said in his own words, he was a drum major for justice. Not trying to be seen, not trying to be in the front, but doing God's will to push a movement that will open doors for everyone who will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. His biography suggested a window of time he was afforded to maximize the call. It was not a human window, but a divine one. He had only so much time to work the work given to him, and then the rest will come after his life was completed. His mission to pave the way towards an authentic freedom that will be free from gimmicks and deception, games and chicanery, divisiveness and subtlety, that will give rise to an attitude of faith, hope, and love everywhere, every place, every time. Some told him to wait, others told him to slow down, more told him that he will die. But none of those commentaries distracted his march towards freedom, for it was not the place for cowardice and timidity, since hate was reigning in the hearts of the polity, as many were forbidden to ride in the front seat of buses, forbidden to drink water from designated fountains, forbidden to live in certain areas, forbidden to buy clothes from Mark stores, and forbidden to eat in certain places. He did not have time to massage his fears, since the call towards justice in the window of time given to him was urgent enough for direct action. For he believed that the arc of the universe is long, but it does bend towards justice. Criticisms will come, but that will not matter anymore. Verbal and physical abuses will come, but that will not matter anymore. Death will come, but it doesn't matter anymore. For it is written, except a corn of wheat dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, it will bring forth much fruit. His life brought awareness, but his death gave rise to an offense on the side of justice to keep carrying the ball. Don't drop the ball. Don't give it to someone else, but you carry the ball to the goal line until justice is won. Some will try to tackle you upfield, but don't quit. Some will try to take the ball from you, but don't quit. Some will try to give you another fake ball, but don't quit. Some will try to trip you up, but don't quit. For if we do, then in his words, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So remember, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. So don't quit. For you can kill the dreamer, but you cannot kill the dream. So don't quit. Justice never quits. Civil rights never quits. Human rights never quit. So let us run and not be weary in well-doing. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. The Reverend Dr. Martin King Jr. did not quit the call. His call authorized him to service, not to be a president, but it's all right, or to be a prime minister, and that's all right, or to be a lord, that is not all right. But he chose to serve, a servant to humanity, a servant to the people, a servant under God. His service was reassured on a specific evening when he was overwhelmed with fear and his indecisiveness whether he should continue to call. So I close this eulogy with excerpts from a sermon entitled, Why Jesus Called a Wise Man a Fool. He shared an experience which he identified as a knock at midnight after coming home from a church meeting one evening, and there he received a nasty phone call. And the caller told Dr. King, and I'm quoting, "We are tired of you and your mess now. And if you're not out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow your brains out and blow up your house." I heard these days before, but for some reason that night it got to me. I turned over. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was frustrated, bewildered, and then I got up and went back to the kitchen. And I started warming some coffee, thinking that coffee would give me a little relief. And then I started thinking about many things. I pulled back on the theology and philosophy that I had just studied in the universities, trying to get philosophical and theological reasons for the existence and the reality of sin and evil. But the answer didn't quite come there. I sat there and thought about a beautiful little daughter who had just been born about a month earlier. We have 4 children now, but we had only one then. She was the darling of my life. I come in night after night and see that gentle smile. I sat at that table thinking about that little girl and thinking about the fact that she could be taken away from me any minute. And I started thinking about a dedicated, devoted, and loyal wife who was over there asleep. She could be taken from me. I could be taken from her, and I get to the point that I couldn't take it any longer. I was weak. Something said to me, "You can't call on Daddy now. He's up in Atlanta, 175 miles away. You can't even call on Mama now. You got to call on that something and that person that your daddy used to tell you about. That power that can make a way out of no way." I discovered then that religion had to become real to me. I had to know God for myself. And I bowed down over that cup of coffee. I will never forget it. Oh yes, I prayed a prayer. And I prayed out loud that night. I said, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think the cause that we represent is right. But Lord, I must confess that I'm weak now. I'm faltering. I'm losing my courage." It seemed at that moment that I could hear an inner voice saying to me, "Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you even until the end of the world." And I tell you, I've seen the lightning flashing. I've heard the thunder roll. I felt sin's breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul. But I heard the voice of Jesus say, "Still to fight on." He promised never to leave me. No, never to leave me alone. No, never alone. No, never alone. He promised never to leave me. Never to leave me alone. Sometimes I feel discouraged. I don't mind telling you this morning that sometimes I feel discouraged. I felt discouraged in Chicago. I moved through Mississippi and Georgia. In Alabama, I feel discouraged. Living every day under the threat of death. I feel discouraged sometimes. Living every day under extensive criticism, even from Negroes. I feel discouraged sometimes. Yes, sometimes I feel discouraged and feel my works in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. And so I close. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Thank you, Bishop Howell.
next speaker is Mike McDonald, President of Veterans for Peace, Chapter 27. Mike?
I'm the last speaker. I hope you don't mind that I wore my jammies today. I thought it was a good time to break them out. I was on the Peace Bridge last night, and times are changing. We don't get as many fingers anymore. We don't hear as many get a job. We get more honks and thumbs up and peace signs than ever. And we need to keep the effort going. Marie's leading the charge. The 20th anniversary we want to mention on April 24th. Be there. It's going to be a great evening. Got just a couple of quotes here. Thomas Merton died the same year as Martin Luther King. Thomas said, "Peace demands the most heroic labor and the most difficult sacrifice. It demands greater heroism than war. It demands greater fidelity to the truth and a much more perfect purity of conscience." We are the peace people, so true. And seeing all the kids here today fit in with this other quote I just found today from Marianne Williamson, candidate for president. "History and research proves again and again that the two most significant factors in the creation of peace, domestically or internationally, are the economic empowerment of women and the educational empowerment of children. It is time to release this powerful sector of American genius to the work of promoting life instead of death."
Amen.
And I want to finish with something that Dr. King said in 1964. "World peace through nonviolent means is neither absurd nor unattainable. All other methods have failed. Thus, we must begin anew. Nonviolence is a good starting point. Those of us who believe in this method can be voices of reason, sanity, and understanding amid the voices of violence, hatred, and emotion. We can very well set a mood of peace out of which a system of peace can be built." If we would drop our flags, the Veterans for Peace are proudly going to ring the bells in honor of Dr. King.
Thank you. Now we get to go indoors.